have two speakers. First being Ms. Linda Myers. Mrs. Myers.
Good morning, gentlemen. I have just two simple questions. Several months ago, I asked you to address the county debt and how we were going to pay down it and have a plan of action for that. And I was wondering if you had addressed that and when it would be presented to the public to pay down the debt, since we're now in another cycle about budget, and of course being hit with the school improvement plan. We're going over $70 million in debt here, and that's really not so good for us. So I was wondering what you had come up with a plan, and if there was a timeline for that to reduce this debt.
Well, I would like to say that we are going to have a public hearing on the 11th to talk about the school project, okay? As far as the debt is concerned, it'll probably be addressed in the next physical budget that we run. And a lot of that debt will be waterworks debt, which could be easily pulled away from the regular board of supervisors debt. We could form an authority and let that be their debt.
Well, it still falls on the back of the taxpayer.
Well, but that's, it'll pay itself back with more users now.
You think so? And what portion of the $67 million county debt is that water authority?
I can't tell you, Mr. Dalton. Do you know right on?
What percentage approximately? A little bit?
We can get it for you. We don't
Okay.
right off.
All right.
What I know is that we're going to be discussing a little later today a request from myself to discuss those reductions.
Reduction of bonds. Right. It'll save us several $1 million over a long period of time.
Okay. That was one question. And also, I had sent a FOIA request to Woody French, the gentleman that was here with Jack Hensler from the Crooked Road, concerning a list of things, and that was over a month ago. I did receive some information back from from Jack Hensler. It's not very comprehensive, and Woody French has not been forthcoming with anything asked for from them, so they're being really closed-mouthed about this, and that's very frustrating. I'll be pursuing the questions.
Okay.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Ms. Sarah Paul from the library. Ms. Paul?
Good morning.
Morning.
The library has, we did sort of a little bit of an annual report thing, so I just came to bring that to you. And I just want you to know that there's one color copy, but only one. I'm just that cheap. And I even give the chairman one, because he's on my board, he's already got
I
one.
got it.
So, everybody else is good.
I didn't get a colored copy though.
That's right. He got a black and white.
I got black and white also.
There you go.
I'll leave it here for Mr. Housen.
There you go,
Thank
that'd be
you.
great.
Thank you, Paul.
So we just appreciate very much all y'all's support, everything we do. I'll give a color one to Mr. Dawson. And thank you very much for all you do. Thank you.
At this time on the agenda, that concludes citizens' time for those who have signed up. Is there anyone that came in late that would like to speak? All right, I'll close citizens' time. This time we were expecting an AEP presentation. I'm going to move on with the agenda, and hopefully those people have been delayed and will be here for that presentation. The next order of business is our minutes of the previous meeting, which was November the 14th, 2012.
Make a motion, we approve the minutes as presented.
Then a second. All right. We have a motion and a second. Are there any additions or? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. Mr. Hall?
Aye.
Aye. And aye. Thank you. We will move now to payment of the invoices.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to pay the invoices.
Okay. Motion to pay the invoices. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Then moved and second. Does anyone have a question about any invoice? Seeing none, I'll again start with you, Mr. Hall.
Aye.
And aye. Thank you. We will now move to unfinished business. Mr. Dalton, do you have any unfinished business? Am I to assume that you all are from AEP? Okay, we'll give you a few seconds to organize.
Are you already ready for it?
Well, yes, ma'am, we passed it. We're a speedy bunch here.
You are.
We'll move down to reports and then come back with the AEP presentation. Sam?
Good morning, Jim. On our consolidated account report, currently we have $48,949,000 in all of our accounts. Our general fund balance, $21,284,000. I did preach y'all a new revenue report of yesterday, but it hadn't changed that much. Currently, we're in the local taxes. Yesterday, we've taken in $6,390,000, about 38% of our taxes. It's a little slower than what it was this time last year. I hope it's going to pick up the next 9 days. Got to take, time will tell, we'll just have to see. But
Everybody spent their money on Black Tuesday.
it's like
Super Monday, Cyber Monday or something.
Saturday or whatever it was, I guess. But our mail and stuff was even a little slower yesterday than what normally is after that holiday. We had a couple of trays of mail. We had 3/4 trays. A little slower. We'll see what's going to happen as it goes.
Anyone have any questions for Sam? Thank you.
Thanks, sir. Sticker excused.
We'll now go to Board of Supervisors reports. Black Lake District, all of us put our prayers for Mr. Hausman. His wife is having surgery today, and we hope everything goes well there. West Whitfield. I don't have anything. Nothing to report. Fort Chisholm.
Yeah, we've got some improvements for VDOT on some secondary road safety issue on Pepper Road has been done, and marking some deficiencies on Schoolhouse Road, Max Meadows, and that's all.
All right, thank you. Lead Mines.
I don't have anything.
Steeple.
I don't have anything that I can remember this month.
Okay. At large.
Mr. Chairman, I've just got this, I've been going around with Dr. Brennan and the school board. They've been going to the PTO meetings and talking about the capital improvements at schools. I've been encouraging the citizens that attended these to come out to the public hearings that we're getting ready to have, to voice their opinions and their feelings. The more we hear from them, the easier it is for us to make a decision.
I have nothing to report from East Whitfield. Gentleman, lady, are you all prepared?
We are.
All right, let's turn the ball. And I'm sorry, I don't have your names here, so if you just introduce yourself as you come.
I'm representing Appalachian Power. I'm Mary Dagley,
Mary.
and with me are Tom Rosemary and Ron Paul. So they'll be answering questions as we go along. We're really pleased to be here today to speak to you about the proposed project. Now, we do have a 5-minute portion. Just a moment to load that.
They were wrong.
Okay, well, we
There was going to be just a little more.
we understand. We just try to start promptly at 9. And
You
so.
did. Do you have a clicker to use or anything like that? While we're waiting for that to come up, if Tom wouldn't mind maybe handing out, we've got an executive summary to share with all of you. Is it up there yet?
I think it's in the board package.
Yeah,
Yeah.
What does this?
Nothing wrong with a hard copy, though.
Oh, it's a package, electronic.
yeah, I do, I review it.
I can
Podium.
see it.
Okay.
Back up, you wanna look
Back that
straight
podium.
up.
Just pull the podium back.
There's one right above you.
I can move away from the mic. I have a history of having a very loud voice anyway, so.
I think you're in prayer.
Well, we're really pleased to be here with you today. We are happy to present this proposal and hope that you will feel the same once you've heard the presentation. And if you would like to, instead of waiting until after the presentation, it is a short presentation, but if you would like to, instead of waiting until afterwards for a question and answer, we would be happy to answer questions as we go along. Next slide. Basically, our outline for today's presentation is we'll overview our situation and our proposal, provide you with a status update, and a description of the three-step process. And again, I already mentioned the question and answer. Basically, the situation is simple. New lines are needed to ensure continued reliable electric service to customers in the four-county region here of Witt, Carroll, Grayson, and Smith counties. American Electric Power and PJM planning studies project that by 2015, electric service to approximately 62,000 customers in these counties may be exposed to unacceptable voltage deviations unless the transmission system serving this area is reinforced. And an added bonus to this particular situation is that it very much strengthens your economic development efforts here in the community. What you're looking at on the screen above is examples of the different types of structures that may be used. Primarily, the one on the far right, the steel will be the dominant structure. We're proposing connecting stations with a new transmission line from Jackson Ferry to Witt. It'll be approximately 18 miles long, with an average 120-foot tall structure and a 100-foot right-of-way. This process is a three-step process. One that begins with Appalachian Power. The second piece of it is the FCC review process, and then the construction phase. The application process is complete, and we have filed with the FCC just a few weeks ago, November 15th, and I'll detail those steps briefly for you. The process, as you can see, is a 6 to 7 month process. We start with everything that could work. In this situation, there were 4 different routes that were considered, and after extensive input, we identified what we think would be the preferred route, and that's what we filed with the FCC. The key dates for the project was proposed or announced on May 9th, and the public input phase continued from then through July 14th. There were news releases, phone calls, a workshop, and a website, trying to use all the different methods of communication so that we could hear back from your citizens what their concerns were with the various routes. On May 24th, we held a public open house at Fort Chisholm High School where 87 people attended, and they were able to talk with various representatives from the company, including engineers, people from right-of-way. Tom, in particular, was involved in collecting citizen feedback. You know, they would talk with us, and we were jotting down what they would say. Some of them would write what their opinions were. In addition to that, the website allowed them another forum for communicating with us, and of course, they can always call us at any time. Now we filed, as I mentioned, we filed with the FCC. a 10 to 12-month process is beginning at this point, where the SEC will review the need, the solutions, and the route. They, again, will initiate another public involvement phase that will include public notices, comment periods, and a public hearing. We expect that we'll receive an order sometime in fall of 2013, a year from now. And then we begin the construction phase. That'll be a 24 to 30-month cycle that we would begin following the SEC approval. We'll work with landowners to acquire rights of way and access roads and reconstruct them. Our target in-service date is 2015. And with that, if you would move to the map 2 slides later. And I'll conclude with the map, and we'll certainly appreciate any questions that you might have.
I have a question. I noticed that surrounding area, we had to look at consumers, what part is sold out of the area, percentage-wise?
What part of the customers were out of the area?
Yeah.
I don't have the exact customer counts for all. There are 62,000 customers throughout the 4-county region.
Okay, but you don't know how much is sold percentage-wise out of the area. In other words, most of the consumers are out of the area, right? Other states.
Oh.
Yeah, it's a classic.
I'm sorry,
Maybe I can
understand what
respond to
you're
you.
saying.
A 138,000 volt line basically serves the local distribution stations. It contributes very little to the ability to the company to sell power to the adjoining companies and their surrounding states. The 765 project is more of a bulk power transmission system. This is like a local transmission system. Right, you know, this is the same kind of line that goes by the Pepsi-Cola bottling plant across the interstate. So, you know, it's a voltage and a transmission design that's been around since, you know, probably the 30s.
I apologize, I didn't understand what you were asking. I was trying to answer another question. Did that clarify?
Any board members have a question?
I guess to follow up with that, 138 is really going from substation to substation to reinforce the local network for reliability to the local customers.
Right, exactly right.
That's a good way to put it.
That's a great way to put it, because basically what happens in a 138 volt substation is that's where your transformers are that bring that transmission voltage down to the level that you have in your neighborhoods. In other words, always the circuits that serve your neighborhood emanate from a 138 station in this area.
Are there any other questions out from the audience? We'll give them an opportunity.
Will any of the right-of-way, we use any of the existing right-of-ways, or is this going to be a whole new right-of-way system?
Basically, it will be a brand new right-of-way. We don't see the opportunity here to take anything down, you know, as far as existing transmission. You know, for example, you see part of the line route parallels the big gas transmission line. That will be a separate new right-of-way beside the gas transmission right-of-way. So it will be all brand new right-of-way, 100-foot wide.
Beside the, like the gas, how wide is their right-of-way?
That's a great question.
I can't say they combined, I mean, there's
No,
nothing.
you can't put them on the same right-of-way.
Huh?
You cannot put an electric transmission line and a gas pipeline on the same right-of-way. It just technically doesn't work for a number of reasons. You know, they have to have a certain separation. For example, if a lightning strike hits a transmission line, it's going to dissipate down through the ground. Well, if you're too close to that gas pipeline,
That's
that's
what
going
I'm saying.
Safety issue.
Right.
Okay.
Anybody else?
I think the gas pipeline, Sam, that runs through, that they're paralleling, it looks, and it also parallels, it looks to me like the interstate. The gas pipeline was 100 feet wide.
Okay. I just wondered, because that's where all your complaints gonna be, on the right-of-ways anyway, so.
Well-
I thought if you could use more of your existing right-of-ways from the other, like your 765 line and things like that, it cut down on a lot of the expense and arguments.
As part of this review process, and I'll go ahead and answer that first, comment on that. As part of this review process, in the considerations that were given, it was to find the least obtrusive and try to impact the least possible as we move ahead. So those considerations are, that is considered, and I'm sure that's something, as this process goes forward, that the SEC will evaluate as well.
Could you explain to everybody appears down crossing both the intersections next to the outlet mall, since it's on the map? How you gonna get through that little area there, the cemetery and the mall and stuff?
Wrong.
Yeah, that is definitely a constraint point, but when we cross over the 77, right, as you come up the ramp off of 81, off the combined road bed, and go up the ramp and go on 77 southbound lane, you will notice some terrain rise just shortly after you go past the outlet mall, and that's where we are designated as the crossover or the jump over for Interstate 77. Then we'll run for a few hundred yards parallel to 77 and then go down along the property lines between the outlet mall and the big open area, the old historic house. I can't remember the name of the house the guys were remodeling. But we'll cross over the western end of the 81-77 interchange and then go down through the valley somewhat to where the distribution circuit goes to the sewage treatment plant. And then follow along Reed Creek until we get over towards the, what's the name of the road that goes off of 52 right there at the interchange? 121. And we're across the Armand Track property, somewhere in the area of the Armand Track property where they just recently took down the old house. So but that is a very tight area. There's as you probably well know, there's a historic designation of the old Fort Chiswell site. And we'll be crossing the western corner of the old Fort Chiswell site as we jump across the interstate. We will have a tower in the interstate interchange. We have met with VDOT and talked with them about that, and they are receptive to having a tower in the interchange, where the ramps swing way out to the north to tie into the dual road bed. So that's going to be a little bit of a tight constraint. We have to very carefully plan our construction and traffic control and situations of those, but there's quite a bit of space, in there between those ramps and the main road beds. But by and large, the driving factor for AEP or Appalachian in this situation is to avoid the least number of residents. And if you look through the tables in the application documents, you will see the preferred route clearly has the least number of impacted residents using the parallel to the gas line and cutting through by the old outlet mall and down through the valley by Reed Creek. We displaced no residents with this project as the way it's currently designed.
One last question. I saw three different types of poles. When you get into Whitwell, into the East Whitwell district, I know out in Progress Park we've got a double system on the monopoles.
Right.
Are you inside the town of Whitwell where it gets a little tighter? Are you going to use the monopoles and use the same right of way, or are you going to get another 100 foot inside the corporate limit?
Well, we will be buying every foot of the line will be on a new 100-foot right of way, with the exception there is one section where we come by the Lee Highway station that sits down over the hill from the Whit station. That's very constrained in there, and we will probably, and I'm saying this subject to engineering design, it would appear that we'll be combining some sub-transmission to get through there by the old cemetery that sits right beside that substation. We need to thread our way over that substation yard and right beside that cemetery. We will probably combine the old 69, used to be 88 kV that went down towards Ivanhoe, and combine those structures together to get into West Station. That area has become very, very constrained. Ideally, the company would have liked to have bought both circuits into West Station. But once we got into West Station, seeing all the development around it, West Station's pretty much as it's going to be forever. There just isn't much room for West Station to do anything. So that out of that came the concept of splitting the circuits up. One circuit coming up to Progress Park and going into Progress Park and the other circuit, which will be single circuit lines then. And under those scenarios, you can use the monopole or the H-frame depending upon the span distance. The H-frame, for example, getting over 81 at the Salem Stone Quarry, that's going to be a structure of choice there because of the criteria crossing an interstate highway and a fairly substantial span from ridge to ridge. So it's going to be a blend of monopoles and H-frames.
And how long, with these improvements, how long do you project that this is good for Witt County or the service area without further improvements, or big improvements?
I'll put the monkey right back in. How big a load are you gonna put in Progress Park? You guys bring a big server farm or something that consumes huge amounts of power, that will drive, the growth obviously will drive, the need for the second phase, and what the second phase will be remains to be seen,
I caught that one. How big of a unit can you supply?
Well, these are very high in capacity. This project, it's a $100 million project, and it's going to give you a large ability to transfer power out of the EHV station in Jackson's Ferry. So, the capacity of those lines at 1,590,000 capacity, they're going to be probably in the 500 to 600 megawatt range for each circuit.
Mr. Hawthorne has a comment or a question?
Somewhat along that line, I understand there's like different diameter wires on the 138. Is this going to be the larger diameter that are on the others?
Right. You may remember.
Subsequently answered 500 or 600 megawatts.
Right. It's a very large capacity wire. When typically the company is now leaning towards really building large facilities when they go into places they have high susceptibility of bulk loads coming in. Things like server farms, and there are some industries out there that can come into your community and consume hundreds of megawatts of power.
We propose projects that will consume hundreds of megawatts.
There you
so
go.
Be ready for it.
Right.
Anybody else? Well, we thank you for your presentation. Do you have any other closing remarks?
One closing comment. We're hoping, and it is our goal, that this is a very transparent process. If you have any questions at all, please contact us. We invite those, and as you've received a copy of the executive summary, and for the public, we have at the library a copy of the filing, small little filing here, the two documents, if a person would like to read those are there, and in addition, a copy of the executive summary that summarizes all of that wealth of paper. And again, the website is still open, and we would invite any comments or questions.
Thank you. We're going to take about a 2-minute break. If we get something first.
I guess one thing that's pretty high in the region, I assume that when wind energy intrusion into your system, that the system would allow the wind farmers to come along and insert power.
Right. Yeah, that's a great question. I know there is some studies underway for a very, very preliminary proposal down towards with Grayson County or Carroll County line along Potter County. And, that close proximity to our EHV facilities, I would see no reason for injecting, a fairly substantial block of wind energy into that system. The bulk power system or the 765 system can handle very, very large loads. So if that were to come to pass and become economical and profitable and the development went forward, that close to Jackson's Ferry Station should not be a problem.
Well, based off the election, that seems more probable.
Well, that's right, yeah. You're right. The subsidizing of wind is a likely scenario for the future. There seems to be a lot of criticism of the government subsidy, but, given the current administration continuation, I would say that it's likely to continue.
I know that was off. I apologize for that.
No problem. We appreciate your time this morning.
Thank you. I will take a couple minute break and be short. Come back.